So thank you for having me here to speak about what our company and we have been learning about the many projects that we have conducted in the Web3 space. Many of those projects in collaboration with some of the great startups and companies that are also here at the conference. My name, as you already said, is Jens Paulsen. I'm director in Germany, working in the Web3 space now since 2015. And I'm so delighted to speak here because today Web3 is, probably next to Gen AI, one of the hot topics out in the market. And those out there proclaiming that Web3 is only a fancy new name for blockchain haven't really grasped the full potential and changing potential that we see out there and the change that is upcoming to us. So even within our company, I often get asked, Jens, how much money, how much revenue are we going to make with this topic in the next 10, 15 years? I'm saying all of it. And why is that? That's because it's so much embedded in everything that we do, and it's going to be the backbone of a lot of the things that we do, that it's going to be there. It's going to be flourishing into everything that we do and that we push. So if that is true, why is it then that analysts and also we all here in the room maybe get often asked, why is adoption so slow? Why is that not happening more? We want to see more, and where is it actually? And I try to answer this question by using two things today. One is a preliminary view on a EMEA-wide study that we are conducting, and the other one is simply what we have learned from our projects in the C-level and in the boardroom. So looking in this study, we can already see, and the 39% here are those companies that we see as traditional companies, so not the Web3 players. Digging into these numbers, we can see that already 39% of them have selected a department that is supposed to oversee this topic. Or let me rather correct myself here, only 39% have selected a department. So why is that? That's because it's really a tough cookie to bite. And this is what's going to be the next part in here. But it's also, and if I may address all the startups and Web3 companies out here, it's also tough for those companies because you can bring the best business case to a company, but there's no decision maker to take it. So keeping that in mind, it's really about to over-convincing and still explaining the topic. And this is also visible here, because those companies that have picked a department have mainly picked the innovation department. That is not bad. This is a department that is used to incubate topics, to bring them into the market. Nevertheless, it's not the steady business. So also there, it's still working with the companies. It's still working to get the company to understand the implications and the full potential. And of those that have decided who is going to tackle it, it's not always the same department, which is not bad from a business perspective. It depends on the business model that the company has. It's not so nice, though, for the Web3 space, because, again, it's really hard to find out whom to tackle. Who is your counterpart that you need to find? Apparently, and that was a surprise for us, it's not the marketing department. None of the 100 respondents that we have of the companies have picked the marketing department as the one who is driving the topic. And surprisingly, a little number have picked the finance department with 6%. And that taking in considerations what we all see as potential in digitized assets natively or tokenized assets. So that is interesting, but it's not meant to disencourage you. I just want to explain why we might see something that looks slow from the outside, but has a lot of processes that are ongoing in the companies that we already work with. And the companies that we work with, we could derive 6 what I would call paradigm shifts that the C-level needs to not only understand, but embrace to really drive this successfully, because we have seen successful and really interesting examples here. And I would guide you through those now. Pursue collaboration, not competition. That might sound easy. Nevertheless, it's a fundamental change in the way that businesses have been driven for decades. And you've seen the pyramids that Mark Buckley showed. If you have seen his speech, there's always someone at the top. It's always about competition. It's about fighting to get your way there. And this concept now is the difference. Without trying to sound too pathetic, collaboration is the ground here that we need to build great solutions in Web3, because building stuff in isolation does not make sense in this space. Not contributing to the community will slow down your development, you will not get back, and even worse, it will even hinder your adoption of the solution. So we are going from a winner-takes-it-all field to a real network, a network economy where people greatly benefit from working together. And this is a change that needs to sink. And luckily, we already see great examples of these. Even looking in the banking space, which is probably a space that we will all regard as not the one being at the forefront of innovation, we see networks that have been built probably in isolation, but are opening up now, are opening up for co-opetition, are opening up to really working together. And this is an interesting change that is really out there. Your balance sheet's new chapter is digital assets. If you tell that a CFO, again, it needs to sink for a moment. But regardless of the industry, the impact that we see out there, it's going to happen. Natively or tokenized digital assets will end up on the balance sheet. And recent examples like BlackRock are maybe large ones, but also companies like ourselves, like Deloitte, we already have digital assets on the balance sheet. So it's now to really consider what you need to cope with that, but also what are the benefits? What could the Treasury Department have benefits from it? And one thing is for sure, the question how many digits your ERP system is able to cope with is the least interesting one in this space. So we are right at the forefront of interesting times where we have benefits in handling of assets and transaction. We can even act more secure, and security is also bringing me to the next paradigm. The thing is not regulated is not an excuse anymore. At least that holds true for Europe, not everywhere in the world. When I first discussed that stocks, and that must be around 2016, that stocks would be on a blockchain, I was laughed out of the room by my colleagues that this was an unthinkable, hilarious thing and would not make sense, and the technology would not be able to cope with all the transaction times that we need. Who would have thought that Germany is now at the forefront of regulation and really making this happen? So this is a real game changer here, and especially in the European and German place, we have the possibility to take this as a competitive advantage to position ourselves in the market. And when it comes to regulation, I also need to quote myself and correct myself about something horribly wrong that I said a couple of years ago, because I can be quoted saying regulation is a roadblock for innovation, and I must now admit it's the opposite. At least if you want to have large corporates, large adoption in the market, you need to have a certain degree of regulation, of certainty to really attract money, and also the willingness to work in this space. That said, it's really important that regulation does not unintentionally kill new business models, because that is also a possibility, but not always it's really the intention. The next paradigm. Sometimes growing means to let go. And what do I mean by saying this? It's really hard for a company to live with the fact that it's almost impossible in the Web3 space to make a clear business case. That is not true for everything, but at least if you want to be the driver of a network, really bringing an idea at the forefront, you need to invest in the beginning, and it's not clear what your return is going to be. And even worse, you develop IP, and at a certain point, you have to open your IP and give it away for free. At least if you're not selling tokens to join the network, and this is also an adoption barrier. So at a certain point, you give away stuff for free to have your network grow. And this is a real paradigm shift for a company. You develop stuff and you give it away for free, but it's exactly what we need for large-scale adoption and to successfully run business models in a network economy. The gap in tech affinity across generations has never been bigger. This is probably not a surprise, and it's no big news that circles of renewal in tech have been accelerating for years and years and years, and that stuff that sounds impossible has been a standard practice a couple of years later and been used by large proportions of the society. Nevertheless, in our projects, we have realized that in this case, the gap might even be bigger. And this is something that companies need to keep in mind. Otherwise, they might develop beautiful, interesting, cool solutions, probably involving NFTs, allowing you to do this or that, but they might not target at all their customers, and the people that they target might not want their product. So this is nothing really entirely new, but we have seen that this gap is even bigger in Web3, and that needs to be considered. And in the end, we all know that here, Web3 is not only NFT and metaverse, it's much more. And it's one of the very unpleasant moments when you need to tell someone who thinks that he or she has really mastered this topic, that the top of the mountain that they got on is only the tip of the iceberg, and that there's so much behind it that they still haven't grasped. And I would even go as bold as saying that no one in this room, definitely not me, has really managed to fully understand the potential of where we will be in the end. But one thing is really clear: it will change our perception of ownership. It will change the way how we perceive ownership, perception, and especially also the way how we use goods and how goods are utilized. So to summarize, the reason why people might feel that companies are moving slow is that companies in their leadership, next to their normal business, need really to rethink completely how the company is run in order to be successful in the Web3 space. They need to actually reconfigure who their competition is, or whether they are partners, and what they are going to do with them, in which case and in which space. They need to assess what an asset is and where it's located, and what kind of assets do they have in the company that they could bring out or tokenize and bring to the market, and suddenly they are a financial services provider while they were a producer before. And they need to cope with a completely changing surrounding regulatory landscape, which is almost, at least for regulation, changing on a daily basis. It's getting more solid, but it's still not rock solid, and it's ever changing. They need to rethink their governance models and how they interact with others, but also within the firm. They need to rethink their clients, and ultimately, they might even need to rethink who and if someone owns their business. So that is tough, but asking the right questions is always half the battle. And again, trying to address here both the companies, but also the Web3 space. I'm not here to disencourage. I'm just saying it might look slower as it is, and there's a lot of really interesting stuff happening. It's rather the opposite than being slow. But it might sometimes take time to really embrace all those paradigms, to really understand the real movement towards Web3. But if you have a client in this space, or if you are in this space and are starting, I would encourage you to step back, to take a clear view on your vision, the area you want to compete in, the steps towards winning. And we have seen clients that are active in the space, but they don't know why. And being active is also interesting, but the reason why is the reason towards winning, because only then you can assess what you actually need for it and whether your systems in place are working towards the right goal. So if you're interested in talking about this, the Deloitte team and we have a booth upstairs. We're looking forward to talk to you. And with that said, thank you for having me here. Have a great conference.